Yes, hello everyone again. We will start second session. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Professor Ahmet Ulvi Türkbağ,
It's my pleasure.
My colleague Emre Şimşek. Now we start to read your short CV, Professor, firstly, and then you will start. Emre? Emre, can you hear me?
Do you hear me? 1 second. Duyabiliyor musunuz hocam?
Evet Emre, başlayalım.
Biraz az.
Hello, I'm Emre Şimşek. It's second session chair. Professor Ahmet Ulvi Türkbağ is a graduate of Istanbul University Faculty of Law. He also got his master and PhD degrees from Istanbul University. He is currently working as a professor at Galatasaray University Law School in the Department of Philosophy and Sociology of Law. He is mainly working on philosophy of law, sociology of law, justice, human rights, Orientalism, and philosophical and sociological roots of cultures and civilizations. Philosophy, sociology, law, and the state in Turkish means felsefe, sosyoloji, hukuk ve devlet. To prove the unprovable legal theory of Ronald Dworkin in Turkish, kanıtlanamayanı kanıtlamak, Ronald Dworkin'in hukuk kuramı, a current radical in sociology of law, Donald Black are some of the published works of Professor Türkbağ. The floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Like Professor Kuchuradi said, instead of welcome to Istanbul, you well joined to us in Istanbul. I wish to say a sincere hello from my homeland, and I have a recommendation for all. It's a serious recommendation. Please take it seriously. It's a time-limitless recommendation. Whenever you come to Istanbul, you might see or contemplate it from my point of view. It will be a great pleasure for me to guide you in Istanbul, in my birthplace. So, pandemic is an unusual thing. It completely demolished the everyday life, everybody's routines, and build up a weird order which has been called new normal. New normal is not normal. New normal is a torture, I believe. It's hopeless. Is it hopeless? I think no. Hope will be every time because hope and life are twins. I believe hope and life are twins. If there is hope, it will be dream. If there is dream, there will be thoughts. If there are thoughts, thinking beings will try to survive. So I believe that every time there will be hope. And digital era or any other things, for example, singularity, industry 4.0, or any other concept, or machine learning, or deep learning, or deep fakes, whatever deeps or deepest is not important. I am a living thing and I try to survive despite everything. So I'm very grateful to present you three distinguished professors, but I'm not sure all of them are here. Professor Morita, I saw him. I think he's ready. The second one is Professor Malkavi, and the third one is Professor Vesolonska. Everybody is there, I think. Okay. Dear Professor Morita, please firstly introduce yourself in a nutshell, and after that, it will be a great pleasure to hear your speech or point of view. Your turn, dear Professor Morita.
Yeah, first, really, thank you very much, Professor.
You are welcome. You are
Yeah, for your kind introductions. And it is my great pleasure and honor being here. And even though I'm attending from Japan, I feel as if I'm kind of in Istanbul together with all of your participants. And it's my very pleasure meeting and also being able to present my my kind of small ideas for your kind of considerations and further discussions.
It's open to
So
discussion.
just let me start. Let me to be quite brief, yeah, because time is rather kind of limited, and just I want to leave my time for further discussions. And also, I sent my papers a couple of days ago, and maybe some people may already go it through it. So anyway, so my title is Rights Philosophy in the Third Wave Civilizations. And third wave is, I think, it's quite a familiar name. So because of this is the title of the bestseller book published in 1981 by Alvin Toffler, in American prominent futurist. And yes, we are, as Professor mentioned, we are facing this global crisis, this pandemic and global warming and the political confrontations and the racial discriminations, regional violence, and the technological disruptions. My kind of understanding, and I think this is this perception of the Alvin Toffler, those kind of disastrous events are not kind of independent, different, kind of phenomena, but it's rather different facets of the same single things, which means that the emerging new civilizations, that's named the third wave civilizations by the Alvin Toffler. And as a result, I understand that we as a human, as a professor, I think Morman quite eloquently mentioned at the beginning of our conference that we as a human gradually recognize and accept that we are not sovereign over other kind of creatures and other things. So my major central questions, how does this perception change affect our idea of human rights? That's my point. And just I want to briefly touch upon this the paradox of human rights and also the history and then third wave civilizations. And also then I want to introduce this, just talk about a little bit of desecularizations of the public spheres, which is getting more and more common and widespread nowadays. And then finally, I present my kind of a small idea of its non-anthropocentric rights philosophy. And I call it rights of things. So let me start. Jacques Maritain is I think he's quite well known philosopher, French philosopher, and also a major promoter of human rights, particularly Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And what he said rational justification of human rights are indispensable, but at the same time, powerless to create agreement among men. And this is a quite famous statement that I think to anyone who just studied in human rights quite be aware of this statement of this Jacques Maritain. So basically what he said is that he's quite 100% convinced and confident of his own justification of human rights. And but at the same time, there are different equally reliable justifications of human rights. And those kind of difference of opinions, of the difference of just the idea, doesn't prevent any of us to agree to a practical, positive, in the human rights law. It's embodied in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or other international human rights treaties or constitutions. So, but still, Jacques Maritain strongly believed that we still need to explore philosophical foundation of the rights. And for Jacques Maritain, It is a natural law. And but he said that even this natural law, concept of natural law, has changed in the Western modern histories. And as I think everybody knows, that in fact, simply put, in the human view or human freedom, replaced God as a supreme source and origin of natural laws. And that's, I think, an observation of this Jaku Mountains. And what happened as a result of that? So it means that natural law was considered to be able to deduce from the autonomy of the human view. Now, since, as I said at the beginning, now we are kind of moving on to the completely different set of the civilizations, in a third wave civilizations. And Alvin Toffler said, when we shape, we are building up new civilizations. At the same time, those new civilizations will return, shape our understanding and our view of human and our view of this world. So then, in Toffler's account, in the previous civilizations, that is kind of disappearing now. It's so-called industrial civilizations, maybe in other words, and Toffler mentions it's the second wave civilizations. And this second wave civilization has three pillars. And human, one is human should hold dominion over nature. So human is superior to any other things. And the second, human are the pinnacle of long process of evolutions. And third is history will progress towards a better life for humanities. So those three are kind of fundamental foundations of so-called second wave civilizations, which is now being challenged and replaced by third wave civilizations. So then, advancing science and technologies and diversifying source of energy and demassification production and the reintegration of the consumer and producers, all those phenomena together with new communication media like social media is fundamentally transform who we are and the notion of the modern self. So as a result, we are accepting and acknowledging that humans are not in a servant over others, and we accept that we are one of many and one of much greater lives. Then it's also the same thing they also are described by Luciano Floridi. He's, I think, this philosopher of information ethics. And he also same thing, he talked about the same things. Basically, as in a science and technology they developed, in which dethrones the human. And then as a result, we are accepting the human as one of many. So then, yes. So then, in parallel with this, our kind of conceptual transformations, also we observe the other quite dominant in the phenomenon in political and legal philosophies. It's so-called desecularization of the public spheres. And Charles Taylor, quite eloquently describes this phenomena, namely, we had the mice of reason alone, and it's not valid anymore. And it was developed during this second wave civilization, based on this self-sufficient reason and this following the natural science as a model, and also this modern post-Grotian understanding of society as made of individuals. So what happened? But as this desecularization is kind of going on, so we gradually accept and also acknowledge that this rational credibility between religious and non-religious discourse seems to have no reasonable foundations, as Charles Taylor kind of strongly advocated. And then this kind of and then we now kind of come across the new philosophers like Marcus Gabriel. He's, I think, advocate of so-called speculative realism nowadays. And what he said, in fact, his neo-existentialism is an ontological pluralism. And basically what he said is we have a different of kind of domains. And he called it in a space of, in a sense. And we have different in spaces of senses, and we need different languages. One language can be quite objective, and like natural science in like, and maybe other kind of the sense of, well, the space of sense needs much more human-centered languages. So, but altogether, we have ontologically in a plural realities, and each reality needs a different language, and it is exists. So that's, I think, major kind of the connotations of Max Gabriel try to convince us. And then, based on all this argument, I really want to talk about this a little bit different in the light philosophies. And then first, I really want to just share this kind of informations. I think somebody might have heard about this Universal Declaration of the Rights of the Rivers. And this is a quite huge, widely accepted, particularly among the environmentalists and also progressive kind of philosophers. And in their declaration in kind of holds that rivers are living entities and entitled to fundamental rights as human. And they are entitled to legal guardians. So, and quite recently, also some Supreme Courts also deliver the rulings which grant the rivers the same legal status as human. In Bangladesh, New Zealand, Ecuador, we saw those kind of cases. So just I want to come back to Martin in a critical, in a realism. In 70 years ago, he presented these ideas. And basically what he said is we have the universe of existence, universe of things. And also we have the universe of intelligibility. That we, as a human, we can really kind of observe and interpret and understand. But in Martin's account, these things and also human-centered objects can be distinguished, but not separated. And essence of things is embedded in things itself. And that's quite, well, I think in a sense, it's quite similar to the Aristotle's philosophies. And of course, it's quite natural because Martin is a Thomist and quite a follower of the Aristotle philosophies. So anyway, so my connotation is following this speculative philosophy. And if we accept ontological dignity of things, we have to admit things are at least in to some extent vital, active, and creative. So then, if we come back to the Martin's rights philosophy, so what he said is the essence of man is embedded in human, and the natural law could not be conceptualized a priori, and would develop through our social experience, which triggers the essence of man to disclose certain norm with a unique context at each stage of history. So if we admit not only human, but also other things like river or maybe like other animals have their own unique essence, then we could accept that the other things also have their own rights proportional to their context and existential experiences. So my proposition that I really want to throw out for your kind of further kind of comments or some dialogue is if we accept human is only a part of nature and meaning the things, and if we accept everything has own essence, so essence means the dignity as a foundation of rights, then we could come up with one non-anthropocentric philosophy of rights. So that's my propositions. I hope I make myself understood clearly.
Yes. Sure. Thank you so much, dear professor. It was a pleasure to listen to you. My second distinguished professor is here, Malkavi, Bashir H. Malkavi. Dear Malkavi, no? Dear Professor Gürriz or Emre Şimşek, Malkavi is here or not? Whether is here or not?
I couldn't see him.
Yes.
And I already wrote him to message, but he didn't.
Okay.
I couldn't receive any response.
Is Julia Vesolowska is here? Is she here? Julia Vesolowska from Poland. Is she here or not? Interesting session. Only one distinguished professor.
Yes, it is. Maybe.
I am very fast generally, but I can't guess this situation before. Okay, past the question period because the two professors aren't here as far as we know. Waiting for them a couple of minutes, or maybe we're taking the questions.
Questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Is there any question or contribution or any other things? We are waiting for dear audience, interpretation, or any other things, questions? Nobody? But it was very interesting presentation. We debated with my distinguished professor when I was a research assistant about Jack Maritan's Thomism. So it was interesting for me. Niyazi Öktem's book has included Jack Maritan's. But we think that, what do you think, dear professor? We think that Maritan's a little bit close to classical natural right philosophy. What do you think about?
Yes. Yeah, because as everybody knows, he's quite a famous Thomist. And but at the same time, I quite recently, I once again went through his major publications, and he's, yes, in a sense, he's quite let's say in a conservative and classical thinkers, but at the same time, he's also in a sense is quite progressive in the sense that for instance, he talked about in a state sovereignty. State sovereignty, and he insisted that we should give away the concept of state sovereignty altogether. I think as a professor knows quite well, and it's quite I think in a sense, it's quite a radical, I think, in propositions. If we consider it, it's what he said 70 years ago. So in that sense, I think his interpretation of this natural law is not quite outdated, but there's still some relevance to. And as I said, well, I didn't talk so much, but we can see in quite a similarities between this contemporary speculative realism that advocate, yes, and also Jack Maritan's in a critical realism. So in that sense, I think it's really kind of worthwhile in looking back and re-examining his theories. Yeah, that's my positions.
Thank you so much. I wonder, as a second thing.
I have a question.
Yeah, yes. Okay, but dear Professor Kuchuradi, please. You are the first,
Professor Morita. Now, if human rights are principles usually accepted to concerning how human beings should be treated, but they are also principles concerning how human beings should treat other human beings, isn't it?
Yes,
Because
yeah, I think. Yeah.
in this case, is it possible to ascribe rights, basic rights to nature or to animals even? This is my question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's, I think, quite important questions. And I think, once again, if we come back to this Jack Martin's in a statement, he said that the essence of man in itself cannot produce any kind of legal norms, which is triggered by our own existential experience at certain point of time, at certain stage of our history. So meaning that 300 years ago, so we couldn't expect the same standard of human rights that we are enjoying. That's quite obvious. And it doesn't mean that this kind of yes, human rights was not kind of expected 300 years ago, but the people that time lived in completely different conditions and the context. So that's why the situation and also extent and the scope of human rights are quite different. And what Martin said is, but still, let's say as a human, we have in the essence as a human, like Aristotle quite eloquently articulated. So, but this essence cannot realize or cannot produce certain set of human rights, which is pretty much developed in the interaction with each in this social and this historical context. That's, I think, what Jack Martin really emphasized in his theories. And then coming back to your questions, then we are here in the 21st centuries, and we have our own kind of common understanding how we should treat other humans, and also how we should treat other animals. This concept is also quite different from our concept that we had, let's say, 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So this development of our concept of how to treat humans and how to treat animals also has changed, in a sense, has progressed in the last 100 years or maybe 200 years. So that's, I think, actual facts that we must keep in mind. And it doesn't mean that human rights is relational. It's not. Yeah, because essence of man is granted. So it cannot be embodied in the same extent and the same scope, but that's not some kind of relative things. So that's, I think, the idea that behind. So animals should be, I think animals will be treated much better, maybe in 20 years from now on, and also a human to treat each other much better than that we are doing now. So that's, I think, the kind of consequence of this my argument based on this Jack Martin theory. Did I make myself clear?
Okay. Dear Professor Kuchuradi, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I understand. It's something different to treat animals and nature in a given way, but there is no reciprocity. So human rights presuppose reciprocity.
Mm.
And we don't see this reciprocity. So of course, we have to treat all nature, also animals. But if there is no reciprocity, can we ascribe them human rights? Can we
rights holder.
Basic rights? This was my question, and I say no myself. But this doesn't prevent us to insist on treating we humans, animals, and nature in a given way and protect them.
Yeah, that's really, thank you very much. I think it's exactly you are striking the kind of a major point of argument in where I think in the so-called advocates or philosophers of speculative realism are really challenging, meaning that yes, we think that animals cannot be in a reciprocal kind of relationship with humans because human only has this kind of reasons and kind of rational capacities to interpret and to think and maybe to develop in our own logic. And of course, we can communicate our thoughts with other people's, but animals cannot do, and also the stones cannot do, and of course the rivers cannot do. But does it mean that really they do not have any kind of anything to say? Probably that's the point. Probably they have in a completely different languages that we cannot imagine and we cannot understand. And that's, I think, in a fundamental challenge that these contemporary philosophers are trying to impose upon our the kind of assumptions that we have been the long years get used to. So we many years in having the kind of idea that the humans are something superior, and we must be a guardian for the rest of the people, the rest of the animals, and maybe the rest of the nature as a whole. But my question is, isn't this conception itself is some kind of anthropocentric in the prejudice that we should address and challenge as a philosopher? That's my point.
Thank you so much. Dear Professor, I wonder, we have enough time. The last point of your last assertion reminded me that Giordano Bruno's philosophy. What do you think about that? Okay, thank you so much.
Giordano Bruno, so sorry, just
Yes.
I'm not quite aware of him, but
Okay,
which point?
okay.
But
Okay,
which point are
okay.
you?
Okay. Do you think that you a little bit close to animism?
Yes, yeah, but
Yes.
maybe I should say that I'm much closer to Charles Taylor's interpretation of Hegel's philosophies, because yes, because it's not pantheism in Hegel's theology. Well, we should not say theology, but anyway, his theory in Hegel's theory is not pantheism, but it's not kind of monotheism like Christianity. So what he's trying to, I think what he's trying, well, it's based on Charles Taylor's interpretation.
So, as far as I understand, you close to Hegel and Baruch Spinoza, the line, a little bit, or not?
Yeah,
Thank you so
exactly.
much. Thank you so
yes,
much.
exactly. Yes.
Dear professors, that's all we do, okay? Our session a little bit in a nutshell, and we come to an end like the life. An unexpected thing happened. Nobody can know, okay? Nobody can know. Thank you so much. Güriz hocam, ne yapalım? What we do?
Ben bir soru sorabilir miyim acaba?
Çok memnun oluruz, bekliyoruz.
Dear Professor, thank you for your Dear Professor, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask you if we factually recognize the rights of things, I mean the rights of ontological things, because they are useful for us, or I mean, because of the global climate crisis, we have to be more sensible about the nature, and we have to be more sensible about the animals, because not recognizing the rights of the animals or the environment will threaten us eventually. Do you think we do it for pragmatic reasons, or do we have, as you stated, or should we have an ideology like animism, or maybe a metaphysical concept with your referral to Hegel? I mean, do you think, are you hopeful that we will recognize the rights of ontological things because of an ideological or metaphysical idea? Or are we going to do this because it will be useful for us? I know my question is a bit speculative, but I wanted to hear your opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think this kind of a transformation of this view of human and view of world, should be, but I think that's necessary. Yeah, because as I said, we are now moving from so-called old civilizations to emerging new civilizations that Alvin Toffler named third wave civilizations. And I think we really need to change also our mindset. Or more precisely speaking, I think we need a completely different mindset and a view of human in order to survive in this new, and still, we are standing at the very beginning of this emerging new civilizations, and we don't know what will happen, and that's why we are quite uncertain, and somehow we feel a little bit fearful about what's going to happen next, right? But my assumption is that that's not only because this pandemic, not only because this political confrontation, that's because these fundamental structures and also underlying, in assumption, a view of humans, a view of world are facing in a challenge. And we really need to come up with a completely different view. So that's why I'm trying to explore these questions. Yeah, because it's not only kind of, only for the argument itself, but I think we really need to create or develop in a new set of kind of underlying philosophies which support and justify is a newly emerging this civilizations. That's my kind of positions, and where it came from. That's something funny. Yeah, because 1 year ago, yes, everybody in this face this pandemic, in emerging this COVID-19. And then one question came to my mind. If all humans are destined to die because of this pandemic in 1 month or 2 months, so no exceptions, every human, if die, it's already fixed and determined. So if in that case, so who else are feeling sorry for us, for humans? I mean, for other species. So this question really reminded me. It came to my mind suddenly, and it reminded me that we as a human are not species that very much accepted or very much appreciated by others. So that I think there's some kind of some kind of recognitions and understanding came to my mind. And then I saw that if humans disappear, and then how the other species will think about. So they might be relieved, and they might feel quite happy without human beings. So that's quite also likely to happen. So then it's triggered me to think about how we really need to kind of to change our this perceptions, so that we can much more in a kind of keep up with and with other species, not as their guardians, but as one of those in other, let's say, in things, in animals, or maybe organic or no organic in things. So that's my kind of reflections.
Okay, it's a good news. I think Miss Veselovska came. Professor, can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Dear Professor Julia Vesolovska, can you hear me? Is she here? Emre, you told me that she is here?
No, not now here.
Not now. Okay. Okay. There's
another question, Professor.
Okay. Your turn. Yeah. You ask a question or any other question?
I think Çağlar.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, Çağlar, your turn. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. There's a detail that I'm not sure whether I could understand it correctly or not in your presentation. So this is about your suggestion. And part of, as far as I can see, part of your suggestion is that, if we accept that other beings in nature has their own essence, then we can see that there's a possibility of thinking of a non-anthropocentric conception of rights.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure whether I understood the place of the notion of essence in your argument for a non-anthropocentric conception of right. So, I mean, as you mentioned in your presentation, it's not a news that we now learn that things in nature other than human beings have their own essence. But do you think that if we accept that a being in nature has its own nature, has its own essence, does this entail that thing has its own rights? If this is what you think, this seems to me a bit problematic, because one can accept that a certain thing in nature has its own essence, but it doesn't necessarily follow from this fact that that thing has its own rights, because our descriptions of the essences of things in nature are descriptions. They are not prescriptions. If you think that a certain thing in nature has its own essence, that's a description, and you cannot derive from that description a prescriptive statement like this has its own rights, because that's a prescriptive that's a prescriptive proposition. So if you think that essence, if you think that accepting that things in nature has their own essences, and this entail that they have rights, this is this looks like a fallacy. You derive a sentence with ought from a sentence which merely describes something in terms of its essential qualities. So this looks like a fallacy to me.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's also, I think, that you touched upon this kind of major philosophical point that for many years in dispute, and that's I think a huge, that's huge issues. But as far as I am concerned about my argument, I should say that this essence of essence of man can be this is a dignity of humans, right? And this can be at the foundation of human rights for humans. That's quite obvious. Yeah, because the human's evidence, the essence is have some kind of vital and this active element. So that's why. So we call it sometimes free views or whatever it is. But we think that there's other things, but probably in animals might be different. But other kind of non-organic kind of things, they cannot have such a kind of vital active element like humans. So, but I think firstly that's kind of epistemological kind of issues. Whether it is our kind of anthropocentric perception is meaning that it's only prejudice, simply seeing the non-organic things as something do not have any kind of active kind of faculties like human. That's one thing. And the second thing is that is it really possible, in a human, that I think in the relating to what kind of Charles Taylor talking about, namely that we cannot describe in the human, in this moral life, in only by referring to or the following this natural science methodology. That I think Charles Taylor is basically in advocating for many, many years, right? And in this sense, even if it looks like a description, it looks like a description of in a human aspect, but still it's already, you remember, right? In Milton's theory, he said universe of things and the universe of intelligibility of human knowledge. So it's interconnected, but distinguishable. So that's, I think, that's ideas. So meaning, what I'm trying to say is that, like, particularly in the human actions, it's cannot be a purely descriptive, and that's why it contains certain kind of prescriptive or normative dimensions. So that's my positions, and I think that's a position of Charles Taylor. And if we accept these positions, then I think this fallacy in between in facts and in this norms, they cannot stand. At least about the things that have in some vital, some active in elements, and then once again, and whether other things like a non-organic in a river or some trees or some planet itself has their own this vital in active elements is huge questions. But at the same time, I think we can address it as an issue of our epistemological kind of challenge. So whether it is only humans in a prejudice, or we can be we can assume or we can imagine that other things have also their own kind of like, let's say, like humans, like more active in this perceptive in faculties. So, and if we accept it, then we must think about what kind of in this form, and maybe that it can be. So that's still I'm not worked out fully, but that's something I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a question from Yağız Eren Abanus, typed question. Thanks for organization and knowledge sharing. Could you please, Professor, elaborate a little bit more on your proposition? How do you think your proposition will reflect itself into laws and procedural processes?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's for instance, I introduced a case of river, and river now is recognized legally as this so-called legal personhood. They let's say like humans, and they have in a standing in the same standing as humans in certain cases, and it's also already accepted in certain countries, as I said, in New Zealand and Bangladesh, and also and Ecuador. And there are a couple of issues that I didn't touch upon in details. But for instance, of course, in a river cannot speak up what they want. And then, of course, we really need some guardians. And therefore, this Universal Declaration of Rights of a River clearly mentioned rivers are entitled to guardians. And in this case, I think I can use in a metaphor of children's rights or some disabled people, even though they cannot express their own opinions, and the best interest of children and the best interest of disabled people should be taken into account when guardians speak up on their behalf. So that's, I think, same analogies can be applied. The case of the rivers. River cannot express, of course, their intention. And also, maybe it can be applied for the future generations as well. The future generations cannot speak up what they want. But I think as humans, we can speak up on their behalf as their guardians if we consider in the best interest of the future generations. So that's my idea.
Thank you so much. Okay. I think that there isn't another or more question. Okay. Our session come to an end. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, dear professor, to join us and sharing your knowledge and information and any other nice thing with you. I hope that you follow my recommendation and come to Istanbul just after the pandemic. Okay. Okay. We will meet again. I hope we will meet again at 2 o'clock, the third session. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. Best for everyone. Thank you so much. Professor Güris, maybe you wish to say anything? Yeah, something.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
And there is another question, but maybe I saw wrongly.
No. Rabia Salam's question.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you again for your support and help. We will meet at 2 o'clock. See you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.